John Kerry has led many lives over a 5-decade career in public service. He enlisted in the Navy in 1966 and served in Vietnam after graduating from Yale. A highly decorated officer, he then famously spoke out against that war upon his return. He would go on to serve in the U.S. Senate for nearly 30 years. In 2004, he was the Democratic nominee for president. And in January 2017, he completed 4 years as Secretary of State under President Obama. He recounts those years and those lives in a new autobiography, Every Day is Extra. And John Kerry joins me again. Welcome back to the NewsHour.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So this book is about your life, your public life, your personal life. I want to back into it, though, by looking at Washington right now. A lot of news about disarray, confusion inside the White House, questions about President Trump's leadership. In all your time in this city, have you ever seen anything like this?
Never.
And
Never.
Is there anything you can compare it to?
Well, obviously, the closest comparison is the years of Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon taped himself. Donald Trump had Omarosa, so there's a little more spice to it. But what we're seeing, Judy, I regret to say, is simply not rising to the level of concern publicly or in choices that are being made by people in Washington who have an ability to have an impact. And I particularly think the United States Senate was designed for moments like this. That's why people have 6-year terms. It's why it's operated under different rules. But one party appears to have decided that their fealty, their loyalty to party president in power is greater than their loyalty to upholding the Constitution and preserving the institution itself. I think it is stunning to me that, I mean, look, you have a president of the United States about whom everybody knows there is a disdain for facts. There is almost no truth coming out on a daily basis. The major media have documented, almost 5,000 lies now. You have a document being taken off the desk of the president so that a policy isn't put in place.
What effect do you think it's having on the United States' position in the world?
Horrible effect. I mean, it's not what I think is happening, it's what I know is happening. There are certain people who are readily and happily taking advantage of this president. You've seen that, I think, with what China is doing right now in certain places. You see that with President Putin in so many ways. I mean, what happened in Helsinki is a total disgrace when he met with President Putin. And he came out of a meeting with President Putin and seemed to take President Putin's position on how we could get to the bottom of the Russia investigation by having Mike McFaul, the former ambassador, be subjected to coming over to Russia to have to be interrogated by the Russians. He gave up on the idea after 24 hours, but it shouldn't have lasted for 24 seconds. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I think people all over the world are holding their breath and wondering what's next.
Well, let me ask about some specific places, parts of American foreign policy where we are watching problems right now. Syria. This is a place, been in the middle of a civil war. Right now they are on the cusp of what appears to be a humanitarian disaster. The Syrian government, with the backing of Russia and Iran, about to go in and attack the last holdout of rebels. This has happened, built up over a course of years in which the U.S. has not played the role that many thought it had. You tried in your time in the Obama administration to get the U.S. more involved. Is what we are seeing today, honestly, the fruits of decisions made during the Obama administration not to get more involved?
It's the fruits of a long period of, unfortunately, the entire international community failing to do what the international community should do. But I write in the book, there's a chapter on Syria called The Open Wound. Why? Because it is a festering open wound. Because we didn't, in my judgment, make the moves we should have made to leverage Assad to the table. I thought there were things we could have done. I lost that argument.
Why do you think President Obama didn't go along with you?
He had a perception and a different conclusion to his thinking process, and his judgment was that it carried risks that were not worth taking, that it also would probably drag us in even more at a time when we were trying to get out of several other wars. I didn't carry the argument. The president's the decider, and I backed the decision. I mean, he makes those decisions.
I want to move you through several other elements of American foreign policy. North Korea. You've been very critical of President Trump, but he did extend an outreach to Leader Kim, North Korea. They had a summit. There are some signs that the North Koreans may be slowing down. We don't know what more they are doing, their nuclear development program. There haven't been any more.
Continuing. Our intelligence community says they're continuing.
So you don't believe there's been any positive move toward an agreement on denuclearization?
I believe that it is good to talk. I supported the president in his effort to try to reach out. But I don't support diplomacy that has not been thought through sufficiently to have a clear preparation process for a summit and a clear understanding of what you can get out of that summit. But the truth is, there is no understanding on what denuclearization means. There is no understanding for how you move to actually account for the current weaponry they have. There has to be a declaration of what they have. Then there has to be an adequate process of access to determine whether that declaration is truthful, and then how do you manage it? So none of that has happened.
So you don't see anything positive there?
I see positive that they reached out and positive that they're willing to talk. I see it's positive that for at least this period of time, he's not firing a missile. But what we hear from our intel community is that they are continuing the production behind the scenes, quietly, under the table, right. And there are great indications that in fact, Chairman Kim is playing rope-a-dope.
Very quickly through some other points, because I want to get to the book, but I do want to ask you about the Iran nuclear deal. You've made it clear you think it was a huge mistake for the Trump administration to withdraw the U.S. from that nuclear deal. What do you think, just very quickly, do you think the Europeans can hold that together, A, and B, what do you think the Trump administration's goal here is? Do you think it's regime change?
I do. I think that fundamentally they're reaching for a regime change strategy. But I think that they have, in fact, made a decision which is extraordinarily dangerous and counterproductive for our country. And so let me ask you a question. I mean, what countries are with us? I mean, a couple of countries in the Middle East who have always hated Iran, their focus is Iran. But the countries that are involved in the negotiation, China, Russia, Germany, France, Britain, are all supportive of the agreement today, trying to keep the agreement. And what's interesting is Iran is supportive of the agreement and trying to keep the agreement. Now, President Trump, by pulling out, has abandoned our allies, actually infuriated them. He has also broken apart the capacity of a moderate president of Iran, moderate by their standard. I'm not going to qualify it here. But to try to begin to move his country away from where they were heading and embrace change and an opening to the world. Now, the hardliners in Iran have been empowered by what has happened, and the president has made it harder for any Iranian leader to sit down and negotiate with an American, because the hardliners said, don't negotiate with the Americans because you can't trust them.
To the book, or more on the book and more on your life. How do you see your role in how the United States looks back on Vietnam?
Well, I mean, John McCain and I defined that role to a degree together. And John and I didn't know each other well. He was the prisoner of war, spent 5.5 years in jail. I was a protester who came back after the war I'd seen. So we went back to Vietnam. We created an enormous process by which we account for those missing and dead or prisoner. And I write in the book that one of the most profound moments of my public career was standing in the jail cell in Hanoi, in the Hanoi Hilton, where John McCain spent some of those years with him, just the two of us. And it struck me, if John McCain and John Kerry can come together and find common ground in a jail cell in Hanoi, we can solve any problem here in America.
And that's what I want to ask you about, because you do write about your time in the Senate in the 1980s, the 90s, the 2000s, when even though there was clearly disagreement between Republicans and Democrats, they were able to work together on some important issues. Is this country ever going back to a time like this, or are we permanently changed?
Depends on leaders. The rules of the Senate, I tell people, are only marginally, tiny rule here or there, the nuclear piece obviously on judges, but basically the rules of the Senate are the same they were when it worked. It's the people who have changed.
You've been talking, in talking about this book, about the importance for Democrats of these midterms, of showing up, voting. What is it that Democrats should be saying to the American people?
Well, I think
this
Democrats
fall?
are saying it to the American people. It gets swallowed up in daily tweets and in other things that are happening. But it's very, very clear. Only one party in this country made a point of nominating a candidate who didn't believe the President of the United States was born in America or was American. You know, only one party in this country has been willing to walk back from their constitutional responsibility when you look at what's happening in the White House today. But the Democratic Party, I believe, wants to make sure that they're not going to take away health care from Americans because of pre-existing conditions. I think the Democratic Party is very clear about climate change. We want to be the people who bring the energy revolution that is millions of jobs, cleaner, saves lives, and makes America a leader in the world.
You've referred several times to the need for presidential leadership. You haven't ruled out yourself running in 2020.
I have not been thinking about doing it. My entire effort right now is focused on 2018, because in 2 months, we have an opportunity to make our democracy work. And it's a great course correction we could have. The difference in Donald Trump's presidency is not the people who voted for him, it's the people who didn't vote at all.
But you haven't ruled it out, 2020.
You keep going there, you guys. Stop.
Former Secretary of State John Kerry, and the book is Every Day is Extra. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.